Hello, Hoopheads. Welcome to the final edition of the weekly Hoopla of at least the 2023-24 NBA regular season. Of course, we have a whole second season to begin the true NBA season. And of course, we do have the WNBA set to tip off very, very soon, with the WNBA draft being tomorrow or Monday night, depending on when you're listening to this. If you are past Monday the 15th, then please review back to the draft, get yourself acquainted with the new faces of the W, and get prepared. The season will start very soon after. Of course, plenty of men's basketball to finish in the professional side of things. This week will pretty much be a basketball-less week after a pretty busy weekend. But of course, the play-in stuff will all go down Wednesday and Thursday, I do believe. Probably should have written that down, but I can look at it. Either way, we're going to start with the breakdown of my predictions, the seeding of the tournament bracket, all that great stuff. Let me just make sure I am on. I know Wednesday we're getting everything started. Yeah, so Wednesday we get Tuesday we get the Western Conference started. Wednesday the Eastern Conference, and then Friday we get the final seed. And that means the next part of the playoffs will start in the week following. So it's also important to note that there will not be a weekly Hoopla next week. I will be in New York City. No, I'm not intentionally going just to celebrate the Knicks finishing as a 2 seed, but I will be excited to see all the Knicks fans there and get to celebrate a little bit with them, because as a basketball fan, it does make me a little excited to see them do so well, at least for now. But that's the whole point of this particular show, is to break down how we feel about all the matchups, at least the best we can, because now, because of the play-in, we don't know exactly who's playing in 4 of the matchups. So handicaps us a little bit, but we're going to do the best with what we got. Let's jump into it with the first team in the Western Conference, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They finished today blowing the Mavericks out, and I mean blowing the Mavericks out. Of course, this was more or less the Mavericks putting out the Texas Legends, but either way, it was a rout nonetheless. So they secured the number 1 seed, having tied with all the records in the conference. Doesn't really matter. They are the 1 seed. They will play whomever comes out of the out as the 8th seed, which of course is the winner of the second game, not the first game that will be played in the play-in, between the 7 and 8 at least. Again, the play-in is very simple, but it's also kind of weird to just explain. So we'll get to that as we get to it. For now, when it comes to Oklahoma City, you know this is a youthful team, but they're healthy and they're waiting. They're going to have a great opportunity to look at all these different rosters and say what matchups they feel the most comfortable with, which ones they don't, and react to it as well there. I think if you're looking at a critical flaw for the Thunder this season, besides just the easy youth answer, I think the role players' shooting performances are going to be a big thing. Josh Giddey and how much people actually care about his spacing is going to matter, because that essentially can take him at least a little bit away from what he's been giving them. Gordon Hayward has mostly not been great, but has shown a few signs to where make me feel like, hey, he could swing a series. So it's really not an awful team to compete in the moment. So you can get lost and caught up with the youth, but really they have the talent. They don't have the proven talent, I would say. And obviously that's going to be why a lot of people will pick them as the more favorable seed of the 2 and the 1 in the Western Conference. So again, not a team you just want to bank in on playing, because this is a very talented, very youthful team, but the game will completely change. It will change on them in the moment. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander averages a lot of free throws. You would expect those to come down in the playoffs, regardless of how he's officiated, fairly, not fairly. That's just the change that happens naturally, could impact him the hardest. And then the shooting. Is it bad games from Dort, Giddey? Then you don't get bailed out with Isaiah Joe. The shooting there, I think, is obviously going to be the Achilles heel. But what you have with SGA, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen Williams is truly very special, and I think it's being built around very well. So should they surprise someone in the first round this season, it's something that's crazy to say as a first, the best team in the conference. I don't think that would be terribly surprising, but unfortunately, like I'm talking to you right now with doubt, many people will doubt the Oklahoma City Thunder's legitimacy this season. And I don't think that's unfair for the Thunder to be criticized for. It's very common in the history of this game, especially. So Best of luck to them. It's great that this is the start of this new dynasty, or this new chapter, this potential dynasty. But don't be surprised if this is a tough loss to a veteran team this first round. You know what I mean? And if not in the first round, it's just hard to pick the Thunder to win out of the Western Conference. It just feels like eventually a bigger fish will be found. So enough on that one. Again, I'm not that negative on the Thunder in all totality. It's just fair to be honest with the national conversation, with what a lot of people are going to be talking about, and it's going to be Oklahoma City is a very viable upset, despite them having some very, very, very good talent. And despite them, I'll put it this way, being a very good 2K team, I too am curious to see how well that translates in their first full outing, because SGA's had some playoff experience. Dort has had some playoff experience. That was all in the bubble years ago with a different core and coach, so it would be interesting to see. Moving on to the Nuggies, who are the number 2 seed after Minnesota fell today, and they won their game against Memphis. They're also healthy and waiting, which is great for them, obviously. I think the easiest critique has been there all season is the depth of this roster is nowhere near as deep as it was last year. I think that matters. I don't know if that matters enough to beat what you're actually dealing with. Said it many, many times. I think this postseason will cement this to where it very is possible that people start writing books on this exact topic. Is I truly think they have the best five-man starting group in some time and totality of the league and history, all that stuff. And it's not the most romantic group. Like, there's plenty of flaws with each player, I would even say, including Nikola. But it just all sort of blankets together in a way that is very perfect together. The 5 of those guys exactly meld into something very, very special. Even when they're not playing their best, they sort of symbiotically do play their best as a unit. So it's a very, very, very tough group to beat, because it's not just about the bench players for the Nuggets not doing anything. It's also just about as much of how much the starting 5 just does for them, how much positive it just brings into their situation. They're probably not as concerned. We will have a lot of conversation about ducking seeding, about what the proper method is. Once we get to the Eastern Conference, we'll actually have seen this on display, because it did happen today, in a very, very ugly way, I would say. The Nuggets held their own. I really thought they were going to be a 3 seed going into this, but the Wolves just didn't have it today with the Suns. So the Suns playing for a little bit more. So it just happened to work out that way. I look at their depth. I look at the starting 5. I love backing up this group. And even if you love to tell yourself a story about the Warriors or the Lakers, especially those 2 teams, because of their top end talent, it's tough it's like, is this your consolation prize? Is another we fought Denver hard series? Because it's just tough. So yeah, I would, a long story short on all that is I do expect some funny business a little bit, because I don't think you want to be the 7th seed nearly as much as you want to be the 8th seed, and it's not even close. And you could argue in the Eastern Conference the complete opposite, where you'd rather be the 8th seed or you'd rather be the 7th seed than the 8th seed. So it's just one of those situations where I am not surprised that we're going to already start hearing this conversation. It's been hours since this tournament bracket has been set, and yet we're already hearing this conversation, because it's kind of logical. It's gross. It's not the way sports is supposed to work, but it kind of makes sense that there's teams looking at the Nuggets at the 7, like, if all things are equal, let's not deal with that right now. Yeah, and so that's just kind of the way that goes. I would probably pick the Nuggies in whatever series they get. Unlike my Oklahoma City, prediction, I would probably pick the Nuggets against anybody. But hey, Steph Curry and LeBron James, those are tough dudes to bet against, and they have decent enough teams where it would scare me. When it comes to the Pelicans, they have a very interesting young group, a little bit of depth. I wouldn't be as worried there for sure. And then if it's the Kings, I think you pretty much don't. I think, yeah, no disrespect for the Kings. No, can't even be the 7th seed. Anyway, what are we talking about? Kings and Warriors can't even be the 7th seed. So it doesn't matter. If you're looking at the Pelicans or the Lakers, I think you're looking at a Lakers team that could give you more trouble. It was a tough sweep last year. As crazy and as hilarious as that sounds every single time anyone brings it up, it was a competitive sweep. So maybe you're looking at a situation where you just get the toughest route to a repeat, but I still feel pretty confident that whatever's going on and I'll get to with the Lakers is also going to give the Nuggets the edge in that series. The Wolves and the Suns in the 3-6. This is an interesting one. I would say that the 4-5 in the West is going to be, let me scroll my brain here. Yeah. Okay. So I would say the 4-5 in the West is probably going to be the most interesting from just a general NBA standpoint. I know I'm biasly in Dallas, but look right here, that's the NBA. This is just the NBA hat. This just the NBA bias hat. That series is probably going to be the biggest draw. But Suns Wolves is not crazily below that. And honestly, if you really want to argue for that to be even more important, I would listen to you because I find it to be a very interesting matchup. Mostly because whatever happens in the 4-5 doesn't exactly change the trajectory of the franchises that are playing in them. The 3-6 is directly impacting both the Wolves and the Suns and the greater NBA as a result. So with the Wolves, you have the size advantage, you have the depth advantage over the Suns. Everybody's very clear on that. But Karl-Anthony Towns just got back. How does that blend? I mean, just got back. How is his body? Okay, those are great. How's the consistency? Because that's also been a little bit iffy in the past, especially foul trouble in the playoffs. Rudy Gobert. Here we go. You're probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year, but now, just like when we get to the Eastern Conference 1 seed, this is the time where people actually care about what you do this season. All the rest of the stuff you did is irrelevant unless you win the title. Then it's icing on the cake. But at this point, it's just stats for nerds. No one is giving Rudy Gobert his props, his credit, whatever, until this point in the year. He helps his team win and consistently win and live up to their potential because it's a very talented Timberwolves team with a lot of ceiling pointed up, a lot of things going well outside of the ownership stuff, right? So even putting that aside, you like what this team is. You like having the defensive matchups to make the Suns cook that full offense irrelevant. But you don't like the efficiency of your best player. And that's not great for this kind of series. The Suns have looked absolutely atrocious at times this season. But they've put together over this last 10 games or so a formula of actual basketball that I have many doubts about its ceiling, but less doubts about its ability to play hard basketball games in the moment right now. So I do think if they go small, they could win this series. I think if they can manage it to that extent, it's going to be tough when you have Gobert, Towns, and you have Naz Reid on the other side. But I mean, if you effectively do this, you could be really putting Minnesota at a big disadvantage. It's asking a lot from Yusuf Nurkic, Drew Eubanks. It's an interesting test of the Bol Bol theory of has Bol Bol's career been, sparked into anything? I mean, from notable bench player to actual minutes and relying on a role would be quite a bit of a change in an upward trajectory for Bol Bol. It would be nice to see that from any perspective. So, but that is asking a lot. I do feel like the Suns got very lucky in this drawing because I think this can save their season in a way that we really were looking at this season as if it was heading towards the rails or off the rails in a fast way. But you could be looking at a situation here where they survive this series and they advance. And I mean, at that point, unfortunately, the bracket doesn't make life easy on you. But it would be a moral victory in the first year of a new project. And I don't know that that is all, I'm sure there's plenty of people in the Suns front office that would also hate that reality, but that might be the best reality for them. But either way you look at this series, the Wolves could end up, I mean, who knows what could end up happening with the Wolves if this spontaneously combusts, right? With the ownership stuff compounding, this could get a good coach fired. This could get good players traded for no reason. You know what I mean? The fallout from this stuff is real. Even if it's a young team that has time to suffer another, devastating, not really. Last year wasn't devastating, but suffer another tough out in the playoffs. Sure. But at the same time, the Karl Anthony Towns rumors have only ever been this loud. If the Knicks are also in, it gets the Towns rumors just back to maximum capacity. And that's tough to build around, whether you're actually going to trade him or not. The Suns, on the other hand, I mean, Vogel could be fired regardless of how this goes. I don't know what you would do with the Brad Beal contract, but I almost wonder if there would be a world where the Brad Beal contract would be broken up into pieces this offseason in any way possible, because I think the Suns really noticed the lack of depth. Even with Royce O'Neal putting a pretty big bandage on this season, I would still look at the depth of their roster as a failure. Unfortunate failure, given them the talent that I thought they had, but a failure nonetheless at this point in the season. So yeah, that's where I would go. I think actually got to pick somebody here, or I don't have to, but I'm going to for the viewers at home, for everybody that is dedicated to this. You want to hear me put my genie hat on and guess, right? I'm going to guess the Suns, and I'm going to guess the Suns in 6 basketball games, and I'm going to write that down so I remember. And I'm going off the dome here. This isn't even, not even me, I'm just going with the flow. And Suns in 6. I'm putting myself down for it. Well, let's see how that goes. The West is going to be tough. Moving into the Clippers-Mavs round matchup here, as I was teasing earlier, I do think this has the potential to be the best matchup, but of course, there is a pretty big missing piece to this series. Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi hasn't played in some time. I'm not exactly sure where the status is on Kawhi. Let's use our fine friends over here. And let's just see where we got with that. But, this is round 3 of a series. It's been very fun to watch. The Mavs didn't really have much in the bubble, but you have Luka game winner. In the second series, you have a much better Mavs showing, but essentially still Clippers end up pulling that one out. This series, much, much deeper Dallas team, much bigger Dallas team. That certainly matters. Now, the Clippers can play big, like to play big a little bit. But again, without Kawhi Leonard, I think that just obviously makes it very difficult. So, are we looking at a series where the Mavs get 2 games without Kawhi, 3 games without Kawhi? And have to take advantage of it before Kawhi comes back. And I mean, let's be honest, probably is seamlessly fits into what they've done. And then there's the Kai Jones signing today, which I feel like is notable just because Kai is a very talented young man. Obviously had a weird fall from grace in Charlotte. Got picked up very late in the season, which surprised me. This was more of a roster move to dump an injured player to have a usable player for the playoffs. So it's not exactly sure that he'll matter at all. But I do kind of like the idea of him in the event that Tice, Plumlee, and Zubac are not the ideal guys, or even the man Tucker small ball guys. So I just like it as another option to the biggest question mark on their roster, I guess, is the consistency of what they get at the big, who they can play at the big. spot. All those questions for me and the Clippers really are the problem. For the Mavericks, they have gotten much bigger. PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford have made this team much longer. That matters a lot. Derek Jones Jr., great free agency signing this season. Dante Exum, he's a long player for a guard. He's more of a 2 and a 3, but he can play the 1. You know what I mean? That's very vital to what their team is now. That being said, Derek Lively has been out for some time and unfortunately just lost his mother to cancer. So this is a pretty big moment for his young career and for the Mavericks. So he's already got to come back from injury. He's got to learn how to play in the playoffs. He's got to learn how to do so in a coming off the bench role regardless, which isn't the end of the world, but, it's still all a part of the learning process, part of getting into the flow of the game thing. And, of course, he has to do this all with the weight on his shoulders. So very difficult task for Derek Lively. But, if he comes in to play as a massive factor, you could see the Mavericks have exactly what they need to finally win this series, to progress further in this. Luka Doncic, this would be the 3rd playoff series Luka would have won, right? You would have 2. Count. No, there's not. You have a whole. You got to take 2 just to get to the Western Conference Finals. Yeah, this would be 3 or 4, right? So it feels like it's too low for Luka for how this team should be, but whatever. The past, the past. Now you have a deep team. Now you have Kyrie Irving. Now you have the makings of a roster that can make a push, and at times has looked like a team that could rival the Nuggets for a Western to come out of and represent the Western Conference. I think my biggest question, besides the Lively and big minutes issue, that this always sort of exists. It's gotten really good. It's had its moments here and there, but I think for the most part, Jason Kidd and staff have done a good job of rotating bigs. The question I, though, have is it Hardaway, Exum, whoever it has to be, Josh Green, whoever it is, 4 out of 7 games, do I get that high-level bench play from the Mavericks? That I have to question. Do I get that for 4 out of 7? Because I think with the Clippers, they do have a lot of guys that are kind of annoying as hell about how consistently useful they can be, like Norman Powell, Terrence Mann, guys that can be annoyingly consistent, which is just enough to give you the games where the stars sort of even themselves out. And we'll just have to see, because I think that's where your Mavericks really look like they need to consolidate some pieces in the offseason and maybe potentially even take another leap forward with the depth of talent on the roster. I have to pick now. Almost jumped away from that one again. Sorry. I am going to go reluctantly Mavs in 7. I do have a lot of faith in the Mavericks. I do not know what Kawhi Leonard's health is going to look like. So that does cause for a lot of concern. And I also feel like perhaps the Mavericks will get the head start in this series due to the Kawhi injury. Even with the week off, even with Kawhi healthy, I kind of still feel like the Mavs can pull this one off. I hope I'm not putting the clown mask on. I promise I'm not being biased here. I just do genuinely feel good about the Mavericks and what they've built. And I don't love the Clippers, even at their full strength version. I like LAR Way to some extent. I'm fine for them to keep moving forward with LAR Way in the future, depending on what happens with Paul George. But at this point, I'm going to have to go with the Mavs in 7. And they're just going to have to start that new arena next year on a little bit of more of a, blue collar note than hanging a title or saluting a Western Conference title run or whatever. So there you have it. The play-in. Welcome to the play-in, folks. The first one is going to be the Pelicans and the Lakers in New Orleans, which is literally what just happened today. That game was a blowout. I would not consider that game to be much of a testament to anything. For the Pelicans, Brandon Ingram is back. Can they get their groove back with him? They have not had that same level of potency in his absence. They were very, very, very talented for a while. Looked like they could even have been in the race for the top 4 seeds reasonably by this time. Brandon Ingram gets hurt, and then here we are, right? That I like. For the Lakers, I think it's a good, talented team. I think it's got a lot of depth. I think it's got a lot of interesting pieces to be used. I think it's got very little consistency. And I am still terrified of a reality where this team is doing what it needs to look good, but kind of understands its own mortality. And I mostly mean that with Darvin Ham. There's just a lot of stuff with Darvin Ham where I'm a little surprised he's still the head coach to some extent, but not entirely. Mostly to the point where I just worry about do the players already know that they're going to get rid of him, and does the ownership just not want to did the ownership not want to eat the contract this season, or put themselves in a position to have a better chance at the coaching market in the free agents in like a coaching free agency period in the offseason, So from that point of view, I understand. I just don't love the lingering cloud that it puts on your team. Then there's the whole topic of shenanigans that I brought up. Do either one of these teams look at this game and say, no, you first, no, you first, no, you first, no, you first? Anthony Davis left today with some back tightness. He is going to play. Is that conveniently still going to be tight a little bit in this game, but all of a sudden look amazing for the potential, winner of the 8 seed game, I guess is what we can call it, on Friday. So that's an interesting point to look at. Ultimately, I think with the Pelicans, I like this group. I would like for them to just get into the playoffs, get the experience, punch somebody in the mouth, win a game or two. But I don't have high expectations. I have a lot of questions, and I have a lot of ideas about how to build this thing forward. But at this point, I just want to see how everyone responds to the situation, because I just don't see any upside for this Pels team this season. I think there's just too much going on. This is a first round elimination team, but they should get to the first round elimination. Don't lose to the Lakers, then lose to the Kings or Warriors, right? That would be a very, 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 very regressive way to finish a promising season. For the Lakers, like I said, it's, I think this is a fun group. I think you get healthy AD and LeBron playing really good basketball, but at the same time, a fairly mortal roster and a lot of rumors and a lot of leverage in the offseason that makes me feel like potentially them and the front office is already looking ahead to what could be for the next, for the final LeBron James, Anthony Davis Laker years, and not as much about this one. Of course, they'll not talk about it like that. They're going to say and do everything that they're supposed to, but a part of me does have concerns and questions in that space. Yeah. And then I'm going to pick the Lakers to beat the Pelicans, and then to lose to the Nuggets in 6, so that they feel better about themselves. The whole world is still positive. Hey, you know what I mean? Western Conference Finals, and then we lost. We took the defending champions to back-to-back. And then, Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, you know what I mean? Then you get the whole continued story of the Lakers pursuing star off-season, which even if isn't going to happen, as far as the Lakers are concerned, they love that kind of publicity, so that it works all on all ends. That's my prediction there. Getting into the Western Conference's 9 versus 10 game, the Sacramento Kings and the Golden State Warriors in Sacramento. Kings are walking into a pretty bad spot. They're short benched. They don't have a lot of depth of roster. I didn't think they had a lot of great depth of roster coming into the season. I didn't think they got any, they clearly didn't get much better in the trade deadline. And now we're looking at a lot of relying on Harrison Barnes, you know what I mean? And it's fine. I mean, obviously with the Warriors, maybe there's extra motivation, but it's just tough. Sabonis is going to have Draymond up his ass the whole time. He's going to be so annoyed by that. The only thing I can think is positive here is the Kings did well against this group last year in Sacramento. I think Sacramento is a lovely, lovely crowd. I think they give a crap about basketball more than most fan bases. That could be the thing that helps the Kings. Fox and Sabonis together can really do a lot of damage in a one-game, elimination especially. But I've got to be honest, I think the Warriors are playing some of their best basketball. I think that they're playing extremely well to this season, but a lot of the inconsistencies still worry me with Wiggins, with even the rookies. You have two talented rookies, but there's some inconsistencies naturally there. Kuminga and Moody have stepped up, but what version of Clay? So it's tough. I think stubbornly, I'm going to pick the Warriors. I think I'm stubbornly going to pick the Warriors, and then I'm going to have them beat the New Orleans Pelicans, who I think are a little slumpy. And I think they're going to end up finishing this thing off. I think that's where I would go. I think Warriors will end up representing the 8th seed against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And boy, do Oklahoma City fans not want to see that matchup. Ends a dynasty, starts another dynasty. That's a tough way to roll. So as far as the trauma goes, Thunder fans, I get it. But let's move into the Western Conference. Boston Celtics. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Beantown Boys because this is where their season starts. Like I said about Gobert, we do not care what you've done this season unless you win the title. Then we're going to come back and be like, well, clearly this was the best team in basketball all season. Oh, my God. Oh. It's just the way it goes. This group and this franchise has been has come up short many seasons in a row now. The Kristaps Porzingis edition does not come without fear of injury, though they've mostly been they're healthy now, but mostly have been good this whole season as well. Drew Holiday, Derek White, either one of those guys could start shooting bricks. Jason Tatum, tunnel vision. Jaylen Brown, a little tunnel vision too. I know it's going left is always the joke, but it's really the tunnel vision as well. All of the regressing whenever pressure's on. All of those things. Joe Mazzulla, did you earn this job or were you just given this job and now you've done well enough with it where we can't fire you? We don't know these things, and they're not, even if they've been answered, they're not truly answered until they're proven right now. I think the Celtics shouldn't be that worried, obviously. I think that they probably will play somewhat of a lame duck. Well, they're not going to play a lame duck because I do think both the 7 and 8 seeds that'll come out of the East are going to be competitive. But I think with the Celtics, you have to be prepared. And remember, it's a blessing in disguise. If they get punched in the mouth to start the series, it does not mean that it's the worst case scenario. Getting punched in the mouth the first series where you have enough talent to overcome that is probably the best case scenario. And then that gets your fire rolling for the postseason, especially what if you see Miami, you know what I mean? You get the real revenge on Miami. I think that's really what all Celtics fans would be rooting for at this point for sure. So we'll see. That's just sort of where I have them at. The Knicks. This is exciting, man. The Knicks finished at 2 today. Now they finished there through some nefarious means, and we'll talk about that a bit. But they're sitting in a bit of a dangerous spot. As much as I want to get excited about this New York Knicks roster, I'm going to New York. Please, people in New York, don't watch this and then react to me in the street if you see this hat, because I'll probably be rocking this hat in New York. People will be like, oh, big NBA guy, huh? And I'll be like, yeah, big NBA guy. And so, and that's just how people do. So look, the Knicks are going to not have Julius Randle. That's going to lower their ceiling. Doesn't mean they shouldn't win a playoff series. It means it's going to be very difficult to win a playoff series, but it doesn't mean that they can't. I think obviously you're picking between two very difficult opponents with potentially Miami or Philly. But ultimately, Jalen Brunson has been an MVP candidate. Top 5, should finish top 5, I would assume, in that category. OG Anunoby is a perfect Tom Thibodeau player. If he's completely healthy, that's amazing. Your team doesn't have a lot of other things that I'm super excited about, but you have a lot of really useful guys, or a few really useful guys tying it together. Guys like Mitchell Robinson, guys like Isaiah Hartenstein, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo. Really, really good role players. But it's tough. Without Randall, it's really tough. Even with Randall, there was going to be some issues here. But without him, it feels like a pretty big absence to fill. Jalen Brunson is probably going to make this thing very interesting. But ultimately, I do have some concerns. I do really have some concerns there. How like Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic. We thought that was potentially the trade that could put this team over the top. Now both of those guys look like they're iffy at best to even play in a series. Even things like Shake Milton, where like, hey, that's kind of a nice ad. And it's just like, you don't really need that position. It's the wing that you really need a lot more of. Is McBride going to be the guy who takes a step up? I don't think so, right? Did McBride get? No, McBride was the one that got traded. Did I just do the Stephen A thing? Detroit Pistons. No, let me see where these damn Pistons are. Either way. I think you have a plenty good roster here. You just kind of need more OG and Anunoby than I think they're going to get. I trust Jalen Brunson to continue his legacy and how it's been going. I definitely do that. Which one did they get? They got the Grimes. They got Grimes. So I was right. Suck it, Stephen A. McBride is the one that they would be using. So either way, we're talking about bench players. We're talking about guys that aren't probably even going to play in the series, essentially. So as I preview the 7 versus 8, we'll talk about the Knicks' potential future, but let's celebrate where the Knicks have gotten to from this laughing stock of the NBA perennially for most of my life to being a very respectable team with a top 5 MVP candidate and great role players around it, a coach that I feel like represents the true heart of the city in a lot of ways, even if in some frustrating ways. I think it's just fun to see Thibodeau successful in New York. And look, it's going to be tough whoever you draw, but, I still feel like, they should fight. They should have a lot of say in whether or not they advance. I do think that last year they got a little bit of the advantage in playing the Cavaliers. This year they get a big disadvantage. Nevertheless, I expect them to proceed and I think potentially even prevail. But I'll get to that. Bucks Pacers, great draw for the Bucks. Giannis's injury couldn't have been better for them because now instead of having to deal with Philly or Miami in a short turnaround sort of situation where it's like, okay, fuck, we have a week to prepare for these guys, whatever it is. I guess that's still pretty respectable in that time, but. Essentially, we don't know who we're playing for 3 or 4 more days, or 3 or 4 days less than most of our competitors in the NBA. So that is a frustrating disadvantage to some. The Bucks not going to have that issue. They already know they're already preparing for the Pacers, which is really just is Giannis going to be healthy, because the Pacers can score a lot of points. They like to play track meet basketball. Even without, and even with being healthy, besides Benedict Mathurin, there isn't a lot of hope to think, in the playoffs, this defense is going to be good enough. Trust me, it feels as if, and I'm not going to waste too much time on this, the Bucks have a million flaws. Doc Rivers has a million flaws of his own. Damian Lillard, there's a lot of interesting questions about Damian Lillard's value this season and the future, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of interesting questions about how old the team is. All of that stuff I'm fine listening to. But I have to be honest, if Giannis is healthy, I think there's just no damn way. There's just no way that the Pacers are competent enough for that. With all due respect, Indiana, this defense has been hilarious all season. You have Carlisle talking about how it's gotten better, but then, the last day of the season, you're giving up 72 points at halftime to the Hawks, and you're winning that game, scoring 86. But this is, again, it just every time it's like, the Pacers defense is it turning? No, it's not. Every single game, if they had it their way, would be 130 to 120. It's fun to watch. It's, again, when you're looking at the big timeline of the Indiana Pacers, this is a great stepping stone to where you want to be. But in this moment right now, I just don't feel like I feel like this right here is a good opportunity for the Milwaukee Bucks to play a very solid team and win in 5. So Bucks in 5 cools off the freak out button in Milwaukee, if it not for a little while. Long term, I don't know. Luckily, the first round will take about 2 weeks, so I'll be able to get to you guys and project to that before we get to the second round. I do believe that's how the calendar is going to work. All right, the 4-5, the NBA TV series, as many will be calling for this. the Cavs are going to play the Orlando Magic. And yes, this is going to be a test of how much you actually like to watch hoops, or if you're just in it for the drama, which, hey, I don't care whichever you are. I'm just telling you this. If you're watching this series, you probably just actually like the hoops. The Cavs tanked to be in this seed. If they would have finished out a tight game against the Charlotte Hornets today, they would have been able to jump, but they didn't. Instead, they were closing with Tristan Thompson, Imoni Bates, the other Mobley brother. It was quite a decision. The basketball gods will be watching heavily. The Cavs have not played the best basketball to finish the season. Donovan Mitchell has been nursing injury. He and Garland's minutes together have not been ideal, even when they have played. So the questions still linger. They had an awful, awful loss to last season. There is no sign of a Donovan Mitchell extension on the way. The rumor mill around Donovan Mitchell is rearing up again, is heating up extraordinarily. But I don't hate the Orlando Magic as a matchup for them. It's a small ball series because the Magic essentially have bigs, but they don't really care about them that much. And honestly, when you look at the makeup of what they currently have, I wouldn't either. Wendell Carter is a useful player, but it's kind of been more useful to have him off the bench since he's got back from injury. When you have Jonathan Isaac, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, it's a pretty long group. Gary Harris is your two. It's a pretty long player. And then Jalen Suggs, who's a pretty, I guess not super long player, but a very athletic point guard. So defensively, he kind of makes his bread and butter on that side of things. So ultimately, you like the theory that the Magic swallow and suffocate the Cavs even if they go big, right? Or stay big, as they like to. But what the Cavs want is small ball. If there is a Mobley issue, if there's a Jared Allen issue, it does lend its hands to it a little bit more than most other things. Now, here's the biggest issue. Here's the biggest thing. And here's why I personally am leaning the way I'm leaning. I don't know if you guys have heard, but it's kind of important to shoot a basketball. And the Orlando Magic, they don't shoot. They don't shoot it very well. It's been very, very bad. Very, very bad all season. And the consistency from even their best players has not been there. I think they're talented enough to get, to throw some punches, to start to launch their next chapter of Orlando Magic basketball, whether that be the Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero era, whatever you want to call it. It looks like it's great and it's going to get off to a solid start, but not a series winning start. I think the Cavs are going to win this one. I think they're going to win it in 5. Actually, I don't trust the Cavs that much. They're going to win it in 6. Because Paolo Banchero is a motherfucker. And I think in the playoffs, he could certainly have a game or two where he just nullifies what the Cavs are bringing. But ultimately, I think Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, I think that group will shoot very well. And if they don't, if this is an ugly series, congratulations to the Magic, you've won. But I do believe ultimately, once this thing starts to go the way the Cavs want it to go, I think that the 3-ball will end up separating these two groups fairly significantly, which is why I have it in 6, because if I was more confident on the Cavs, I'd have it in 5. Ooh, the play-in, the final play-in, we're almost done. The Philadelphia 76ers versus the Miami Heat. The Zombie Heat are back in action. This is their time of year where they say, hey, just kidding. We weren't trying. We were just vibing, doing different side missions. Now it's time to play. Now we have to win a championship. Oh, we're the 8th seed? Oh, that still counts. That's still technically in. And they get 2 chances at this one, which they kind of need, because I don't hate Philadelphia. I think there's a possibility where Joel Embiid isn't playing at his absolute peak best, and then the Heat sort of are able to control the game that way. But I mostly really like the energy and effort from Philly, and I still kind of wonder if this Zombie Heat thing isn't just bullshit. If we're not just giving them the benefit of the doubt when there's actually some decay in this roster. And that's kind of where my questions are lingering here. So I feel like there's a world where if the Heat win this game, the Heat do beat the Knicks, and they do start to make another one of those Zombie Heat run, however long they actually go. But if they lose this, I think they're naturally probably going to beat the 9-10 game. But what I don't feel great about is them even putting up much of a fight in that potential Celtics matchup. Now, again, I know I was there, but God damn, I want to give Boston the benefit of the doubt of getting up and actually trying in that game or in that series and not letting it slip away. And then what do you have after that for the Heat? You have Jimmy Butler still. Oh, well, if we would have, and then maybe you do start to look at being forced into to trading Hero and whatever you can get and to sort of trying to reconsolidate this thing. Maybe that's where the Donovan Mitchell stuff starts to heat up around the league, is because the Heat have also fallen. I don't know, but frankly, it's tough. Jimmy and Bam as a duo are two of my favorite duos in basketball. There's very few teams I would take over those two particular. They're the top two guys on each roster. Very, very few rosters I would take ahead of them, those two guys. But it's tough. Philly's got a lot of inconsistent players, but it's undeniable when Joel Embiid is on the court, he is the best player of basketball this season to me. In a lot of ways. I guess Nikola is what it is, but Embiid his impact has been outstanding. I mean, a lot of this season was robbed from us, and I think maybe we'd be having a different conversation. Maybe he would be hurt eventually anyway. But every game that man has played in this season has been impactful, and Philly feels like a completely different roster when you're watching the Joel Embiid MVP game, which is basically any night he's suiting up. So I'm going to pick the Philadelphia 76ers to lose this game. I'm going to go ahead and give the Zombie Heat the credit. I'm going to say the Heat versus Knicks grudge match is on the way, and the Philadelphia 76ers will go on to play the winner of the next game. The Bulls and the Hawks, the Jerry Reinsdorf Invitational. This game does not deserve us to be broken down. The Bulls have more NBA players than the Hawks at the current moment. And I don't mean that mathematically. Of course, if you count, they're all NBA players. I'm saying about guys who are actually impactful, real NBA players that are here and meant to be here for a while. Another factor, Andre Drummond was hurt in a hilariously stupid play on the final part of the season. In fact, no, I'm not going to pull it back up. We're supposed to be done. Clint Capella, also a little injured. So size situation, maybe that helps offset in a one-off game. But other than that, the Bulls should win this game fairly easily. The Hawks have been a very resilient group, but this has been a weird-ass season, and I'm not sure exactly what the path forward is going to be. I'm not saying it's a very doom and gloom one. I don't love it. You're without Okongwu. You're without Jalen Johnson. I'm pretty sure on both of those accounts. So I'm just looking at this roster. I'm like, just put this fucking team to sleep for a season. Like, let them come back in the off season. I think they're going to be really fun next year, whatever they look like. And then, so I think the Bulls will end up playing the Sixers. I think the Sixers will end up clinching the 8th seed and playing the Boston Celtics. But I do think the Celtics will end up winning that series in 6. I think I'll take the Knicks I'm pick the Miami Heat to win that series, but I'm going to pick them in 7 because I do feel like it's a very, very good Knicks team. But I think that draw for Miami is just too damn nice. That's it. That's my projection. If it's anything like my NCAA tournament bracket, I'm dead wrong on at least one of the most important pieces of this. But I'll probably get like 70% of it right. So, like, if you want to gamble on it, do your own math on those odds. I don't know. Either way, thank you for watching this whole season of the Hoopla. We're ready to come back and get even crazier for you as we go. We're utilizing technology. We're becoming one with the algorithm. So thank you. But we can't do it without you. So like, subscribe, share, comment, all that crap. And remember, go enjoy some sports. But when you're done, you know what I mean? Come enjoy us too.